Greetings, Stash Wyslouch here. Welcome to another quick tip. In our last quick tip, we derived the whole half diminished scale. If you want access to the Patreon workshop, where I talked about how to actually map out the scale in a systematic way across the fretboard so you can really teach your fingers where all these cool notes are, make sure to become a patron on my Patreon page. Today I want to talk about creative, disciplined scale practice. So you found this new set of notes that works against a certain sound that you want to be able to create melodies freely off of, improvise and compose. Where do you start? How do you begin? Well, assuming you've already traversed the step of just being able to play the scale up and down in scale steps, with a metronome, of course. Next thing is to discover some of its intervallic content beyond just the scale steps. So if you skip one note in the scale, you get what in major land might be called a third. So C, if we're talking C whole half diminished, you skip a note, you skip the D, and you get up to an E flat. Good. So we're going to interpolate thirds, or interpolate skips in the scale. We still play the scale, but in between each note we go up a third. And then when we're going down, in between each note, we go down a third. So we go C, up a third. D, up a third. Structured practice. You can either do it or you can't. Not objective. Now, how do you practice this creatively? Put a metronome on. Mine's at 53 beats per minute. Let's call that a half note. And my suggestion now is to put on a drone so you hear the relation, so you hear your notes in relation to that drone, and make up eighth note lines that you deliberately start and stop using exclusively scale steps and the new interval you've just practiced in a structured way. In this case, a third, or skipping a step in the octatonic scale. Put a timer on and do that for the next week. You're practicing the structured exercise of doing a certain new interval in this new scale, and then you're practicing just flowing in eighth note land with a metronome and a drone to make up your own melodies. Don't worry about sounding great. Just worry about doing the rhythm correctly, starting and ending the lines, implementing these new intervals, and wrestling with this new sound that's not quite in your ear yet, that's not in your fingers. And just trust that the process of doing this consistently every day, new things will appear. One thing I want to point out that's interesting with this octatonic scale. In a major scale, if you skip two notes, you go from a C, you skip the D, you skip the E, you land on an F. It makes a perfect fourth, C to F. If you do that off of any note in the C major scale, it's going to produce some sort of diatonic fourth, either a perfect fourth or an augmented fourth. D, you skip two notes, goes up to G. F, you skip two notes, it gets up to B, an augmented fourth. G, you skip two notes, you get a C, a perfect fourth, G to C. Now with this octatonic scale, when we skipped one note, it was fine. We got a minor third off of every note, which by the way is a very interesting property. But now check this out. C, you skip two notes. D, E flat, you land on F. Good. C to F, perfect fourth. So far, our formula is okay. Then you get to the second note of the octatonic scale, D. you skip 2 notes, E flat, F, you land on a G flat. And harmonically speaking, we could call that an F sharp, D to F sharp. Our ear perceives that as a major third. So that's just something interesting that as you're doing intervallic studies of a new scale, like this interesting whole half octatonic scale, you might come across. So for the case of an octatonic scale, we could call these fourths theoretical fourths. Our ear might perceive them as a major third, but it's theoretically a fourth if we use our previous diatonic knowledge. So now you can practice theoretical fourths against the octatonic whole half diminished scale in one position. Now it really starts to sound like something. I really start to notice off of which notes perfect fourth is produced, and off of which notes a theoretical fourth or a major third is produced by skipping 2 notes in the scale. This is an inherent and interesting property that you want to be able to highlight as you're exploring this particular scale. Then you go back to your creative discipline practice and you make flows of 8th note lines, either playing scale steps or implementing these theoretical fourths. I've done this a lot with this scale, and I still need to do it a lot more. But by doing this, trying to hear and feel my way through these new intervals, this new octatonic thing, maybe I'll get better and make up my own melodies on a tune like The Song Is You, where a scale like this can be really useful when that E flat diminished chord pops up. Of course, like anything, there's many different uses for this one exact scale. But let's just begin here. Make sure to become a patron on my Patreon page. Email me to sign up for private lessons. And we'll see you next time for the next quick tip.